larger than 1 whole. The other day, we looked at fractions that were equal to 1 whole. In this case, I have a fraction here that is 5/3, right? And I know that if I'm looking at thirds, I have here 1 whole is equal to 3/3. I have all of my thirds together to equal that. In order to find 5/3, I'm going to start by dividing my number line into those equal thirds, and then move on from there and count up the total number of thirds until I get to 5. So here, I've got my number line between 0 and 1, and I've got it broken into 3 parts. This is my first part here. I'll highlight that here like this. My second part, and my third part, right? In this case, I can label each part. This is 1/3. My next part is 2/3. And as I just explained before, this one here is 3/3 or 1 whole. But I haven't gotten to 5 yet, so I got to keep on going. In this case, I'm going to look at my next whole number, which is from 1 to 2. I'm going to divide this portion of my line into 3 equal parts, like this here, and I'll continue to count them. This here becomes 4/3. This here becomes 5/3. And 2 wholes equals 6/3. In this case, I could find that my part here, this place, is where 5/3 would go. I could do that for any number of fractions. For example, if I had the fraction 9/2, I would start by making my number line, and I'm just going to start here going 0 to 1, and I'm going to make it relatively small because I know that here in this case, I'm going to need 9 of them. In this case here, this first part is 1/2. My second part is 2/2, and that's equal to 1 whole. Here I've got my next whole here, which is from 1 to 2. Notice on the bottom, I'm going to keep all of my whole numbers. I'll go out a little bit further here just in order to make sure that I may or may not need all of it, but we'll see. In this case here, I've got now 3/2, and this here is 4/2. Notice, again, my whole number 2, if I take my 2 wholes here, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's this here. So 2 parts times 2 can equal my 4 up on the top. As I keep on going between 2 and 3, I can divide that again in half, and I've got 5/2, and I come up again, 6/2. Again, noticing that pattern that I have 2 parts for each one. If I multiply 3 times 2, that gets me to my number 6 on the top. Here I got my between 3 and 4, I have 7/2. And on 4, I've got 8/2. I'm almost there. My next one here, I continue again between 4 and 5, and this here becomes 9/2. If I were to continue it out, it would be 10/2. Here, I know that in this case, if I keep coming down here, that I know that this here, 9/2, is between 4 and 5, halfway between. You might actually see this later on, knowing that this here is 4 and 1/2. We don't have to do that here at this point, but you can kind of stow that in the back of your brain a little bit to know that these two things are equal or equivalent. Okay. We'll try one more. Here again, and we'll do it with a smaller one. Here, I'm going to find out where in the world is 6/4. Well, I know it's going to be larger than 1. So here, in this case here, I've got myself again 0 and 1 and 2 here. I know that I'm going to skip this part between 0 and 1 this time. Why exactly is because I know that this is 4/4. If you're still kind of struggling a little bit with that part and it's not making too much sense, I would go back again and make sure that you do from 0 to 1 and divide it into fourths. Here I've got 4/4 already here. I know that's at 1 whole. So I'm now going to look between 1 and 2. I had to divide this into how many parts? That's right, 4 parts. Here I'm going to start again. I'll divide it in half because it's a even number. Here I've got my 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, and 4 parts. Here I'm going to count up again. This is 5/4, and this here is 6/4. 6/4 would be at this point on my number line, which does look halfway between 1 and 2. Give that a shot today when you're looking for numbers that are great or fractions that are greater than 1 whole.